Panther Pod is a podcast featuring the unique interests and talents of students and staff recorded live at Jordan High School. Panther Pod. Get to know your Panthers. Okay, welcome to another edition of Panther Pod here at Jordan High School. I've got a very special guest with us today. We have Maria Dominguez, who's going to talk about some very interesting and serious issues that is kind of part of a national conversation that's going on right now. And so her sitting down and talking with me is a pretty brave thing to do. I've wanted to talk to her for a while. And so welcome, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the Panther podcast.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And we look forward to talking to you. So what we're going to do is we'll just go through some introductions first. And then I've got some questions that I want to ask Maria. And we'll go, in and out of topic, when it's necessary. There's a couple other things that I want to read as well. And you'll kind of get the idea of what this Panther Pod is going to be about once we get into it. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. So Maria, where are you from?
I was born in Mexico.
Okay. What part of Mexico?
I'm actually from Sinaloa. Never heard of it? It's a state in Sinaloa.
I have heard of Sinaloa. Describe what it's like there.
It's very hot, and I don't remember like very much, but I know where I'm from. It's like very hot, and I don't remember very much, but I just know that. Okay.
So were your parents born there?
Yes, my mom was born in another state in Sonora. My dad was also from there.
Okay. Great. So that's cool. When did you come to the United States?
I was like four, about to turn 5.
Okay. So I share a similar background to that. I was born in Vietnam, and my family moved back here right around the same age, so about 5 years old. And so I understand what it's like to come at a very young age to a brand new place and brand new people. Very interesting where I grew up because as a white person in Vietnam during the time, I was a minority in that country. And so it was very interesting. Obviously my parents are white, coming back to the United States but growing up in an Asian culture to begin with, very, very different, situation in the United States than it was in Vietnam where I was born. So what grade are you in?
I'm a senior.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff. So last year in high school, Maria's a senior. So what's it like being a senior?
Stressful.
Yeah.
But exciting too, yeah.
Okay. Lots of work and college applications and all that kind of stuff, which we'll get into a little bit more. So what is the biggest challenge that you're facing as a senior? Is it the work, the motivation, college applications, what is it?
I think all of it at once because obviously the Career Center is there to help me in applying for college, but one thing that I've noticed too, they don't provide that much help for undocumented students, so I kind of had to seek that help for myself, and it became really hard because I kind of had to search it online, and I found out about a college Head Start program online, but the thing that they provided help for low-income undocumented students, so I thought it was a perfect opportunity for me, especially because I have one sister in college, and I know that she could help me in applying, but I still felt really uncertain. And so the thing with the program, it's an hour and a half away. So I commute every Saturday. Well, I used to go every Saturday, but now I go during the week. So I go weekly, and it's in Los Angeles. So I have to take 2 buses and a train to get there. So I commute an hour and a half away, but they help me with college applications. And I know there are other college application, workshops and other places that I could get that same help. But the thing is they have that expertise for undocumented students, and they kind of provide a safe space for me, if that makes sense.
Totally.
So that's the reason why I keep going to that place. And I feel like if it weren't for the help that they've been providing me, I wouldn't be so confident right now, because I know when I face a lot of uncertainty whether I should even keep going with my education because of everything that's been going on. But I'm really glad to be able to have that help, because I really don't know what else I would have been doing during my application process.
That's amazing. And the thing that immediately comes to my mind is fantastic that resource is there for you. But the scary thing is, what about other states, right? We live in California. We know that California's attitude towards undocumented persons, right? We have a very open and accepting attitude. What about the kid who's in, another state,
Yeah.
Texas or something like
Yeah.
that? Would they have the same opportunities, or would
Yeah.
they have the same resource? So that immediately gets me kind of thinking about, the opportunities that are here in California as compared to some of the other states. But thank goodness that opportunity is there for you. So, jumping right in, this Panther Pod is about talking about Maria's undocumented status as she goes through the college application process, which is a very serious, interesting, and very contemporary issue. It's part of a national conversation that's going on. Obviously, with the election of Donald Trump, things have changed a little bit. We're going to get into that. The general topic, among other things, but we're generally going to focus on in this Panther Pod is the issue of being an undocumented young person as you try to become an adult, and what are you going to do? Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go ahead and so we know why Maria's here. What I want to do is get into some specifics. Why do you feel that it's necessary to share this story?
I feel like we hear so much in the media about what undocumented students are, or not just undocumented people, what they are, and like how they come and only come to like steal your resources and your jobs, and but it's not like that. Like, we're coming just for seeking better opportunities, because I know my parents, they came for lack of financial and lack of money, and like because they were doing very well, so they come here and to be repeatedly reminded that they're unwelcome, and it's kind of harsh, because all we want is to have a better future, because my parents just want to build a better future for themselves. And I don't know, I just feel like people don't really understand like our experiences. And that's one thing I feel like it's also important to show to other Jordan students, because there's like a lack of like a lot of these students are citizens, so maybe like they'll be able to place themselves in like other undocumented students' shoes, and like a lot of them are living in the shadows, and are like afraid to make their voices heard, because I know for a long time I was afraid to even say that I am undocumented, because of that like fear of deportation. I know there's like many other students on campus too who are probably going through the same thing, and yeah, I know how it feels, so I just like wish people would like understand like our experiences. I think that's really important too.
I can't tell you enough how proud I am, not just of you, but as a Jordan student and as a person living in this situation who's willing to come forward and share this story, because it is important.
Yeah.
And people living in fear need to understand not only the attitudes of Long Beach Unified School District, and our superintendent has repeatedly said, this is an open space. We're here to serve students, regardless of what their status is. Our job as teachers and as a community is to pull together and give our young people opportunities. And so, is that something that you've experienced at this school, like an open attitude from your teachers? Where, I guess my question would be, have you experienced prejudice from the community? Like, are there odd people that like have given you problems, or where have you experienced some of the things that you're talking about in terms of like discrimination? Have you experienced any of that at any of these steps applying for college, or for from anybody in the community? Or has Long Beach been pretty accepting if they even, you're not going to go walking around telling people you're undocumented, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But have you experienced any tension or anything like that?
I am very lucky to live in Long Beach, because everyone is really accepting, and I found so many teachers who have been able to like to talk about the situation, be open with them, and like make them understand how I feel. So a lot of them have provided me advice, and I've been able to reach out to many of them and tell them how I feel. And I have faced discrimination, because I feel like anyone who is undocumented, or just brown in general, faces discrimination anyway. But not really in Long Beach, no, because Long Beach is very diverse, and I'm really lucky to live here. People are very accepting. But like when I go out of Long Beach, that's when I face like stares, or like I don't know, like just in college application process. I don't know. This is, I guess, kind of discrimination too. Not to like make anyone like feel bad or anything, but like just like having that like lack of the social security number is one thing that's like really important for me, because like that lack of that, just that 9-digit number has been like really important, because of that I haven't been able to apply to a lot of scholarships. And I remember being undocumented didn't really sink in until I was in middle school, and in 8th grade. Like I remember this, like I didn't really like acknowledge the fact that I wasn't documented. Like, I knew I was born in Mexico and I came here, but like it wasn't really like a reality because like our administration wasn't as harsh at all, and like of course deportations were happening, but like it wasn't something that I heard about all the time. And so we were given this opportunity to apply to like a $300 scholarship, and the only thing you had to do was like write an essay about why you wanted it and like the reasons why you should receive it. And I was really excited, and I told my mom about it, and I told her the only thing you needed was a social security number. I didn't really know what that was, but then that's when she told me like I didn't have that, and that's when it started to sink in that like I am prevented from doing the same things, that I'm like limited from what I can do. And up to this day, like now I have a better understanding of what that means.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's an incredible thing to think about, because it just this little 9-digit number, right? Almost tells somebody, young person, and I hate that you had to go through that, because I don't think any young person should ever feel that limit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ever feel limited in what their potential could be, right? Because my personal opinion, and this isn't shared by everybody, but it's my personal opinion, and a lot of my colleagues feel this way, is that the only things that should have mattered in that situation is your essay.
Yeah.
That's because that comes from you, right? But this little 9-digit number kind of being this like cloud, like over somebody's head, telling them that they're legitimate. I mean, what is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's it's tough for me to hear that, because I've dedicated my life to hoping that kids understand their potential. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I can feel that kind of like, it makes me sad. I mean, for lack of a better word, it makes me sad that anybody has to experience that.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that you had to experience that.
Yeah. I know, like, there are many instances where, like, I feel frustrated because I feel restricted in what I can do, but, I don't know, it's always that. Like, I always feel, like, restricted in what I can do, but I guess it's not really, like, complete restriction, just kind of, like, limitations, but, like, what can I learn from it? Like, how can I, that makes sense. Like, how can I overcome that like boundary that I have, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And I think that, you're employing that attitude of like, yes, it is a limit that somebody else has placed on me. Now what do I need to do to overcome that limit? And it's one of those extra steps that I wish wasn't there, but I admire your kind of headspace in terms of like, now I'm just going to go and I'm going to accomplish, I'm going to keep on going and not let it defeat you. Have you felt defeated at sometimes, like, sometimes, man, this is just too hard? I mean, have you felt like that before?
Sometimes, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Okay.
Like, you've heard about like DACA being rescinded and all of that.
Yes.
I remember when that happened just recently, and I was not a DACA recipient, so that's one thing that like I was eligible for it, but I wasn't able to apply. And so when that happened, I felt like such lack of motivation. Even like the next day when I returned to school, I was even wondering like, what is even the whole purpose of this? And I was still in the process of completing my college applications, and I was wondering like, what's even the point if like I'm like repeatedly reminded I don't belong here. I could easily be deported like today or tomorrow, and like there's no guarantee that I'll be here. So what's the whole point? That's what I kept wondering. But then like it was once again I had to remind myself that like just because I'm undocumented doesn't mean that like I don't have the same potential as my peers who was a citizen or something. Like I don't know, I had to remind myself. So it's like it's constantly having to remind yourself that you have the same potential, and you kind of have to keep yourself motivated, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. And the way that I kind of conceive of that in my head is that what you're facing is every day you wake up, you have to make the same decision, right? It's not one decision you make on one day. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. You have to keep reminding yourself every morning. It's like, I'll tell my students, oh, Mr. Carroll, I'm getting a D or an F, and I don't like it. I want to do better.
Yeah.
And I say, well, doing better isn't a decision we're going to make today in a conference. Doing better is every time your eyes open in the morning, you decide that you're going to achieve that day. And that sounds like what you're doing. It's a constant reminder of your potential. And, just in the limited time that I've known you, I can see that. And also the other teachers that I've talked to that have known you more talk about you in such glowing terms. Your motivation, your compassion, you know what I mean? And your willingness to, do whatever it is that you need to do in order to succeed. So Maria was talking about DACA, and DACA comes out of the DREAM Act, which was introduced in 2001 but was never passed. And the DREAM Act would have solved a lot of these issues. Unfortunately, there are political forces in this country that don't believe that the DREAM Act would have been something, I don't know, useful. I really don't know what their thinking was behind it. But it did go through several revisions and had come up many times, what was ultimately defeated and never passed. And so President Obama in 2009, I think that was the first time he brought it up, or 11, he introduced DACA, and basically a way to get around the legislature passing the DREAM Act, and then basically produce DACA, which does some of the same stuff. And we'll get into that a little bit. And that means a way for, and what we call the DACA recipients were dreamers. And those dreamers had paths to go and get to college, and ways that they could become ultimately citizens eventually through a certain path. And we will go over that a little bit more specifically. I've got some statistics that I want to share later. But let's go ahead and get back to some of the things that I want to talk to Maria about. One of them is, how do you feel about some of the things that are being said in the media about undocumented people? Now, here's one of the things. When you're somebody like me, I'm a white person who doesn't, who is an American, even though by the way, I had my own interesting issue with this, and that is I only have a Vietnamese birth certificate, and I was in a situation where I had to present my birth certificate. That's the only copy that I had. I am an American citizen because I was born to two American people. I was born in an American embassy overseas, which is considered U.S. soil. So that problem was easily cleared up because I was a U.S. citizen, but it was an interesting issue that other American kids don't really have to face.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? My birth certificate looks funny. Like I always thought to myself, like, what is this? So coming back here and then going through the process of getting, I still don't have an original American birth certificate. I've only got a copy. What is it that you're facing in the media in terms of what is being said, or maybe some popular misconceptions about who undocumented people are? And you hear the term illegal alien, a lot, which is an offensive, as far as I'm concerned, an offensive term.
Yeah.
What is it that you, just give me your analysis of the current state of the media and how they look at undocumented people.
Oh, it brings me so much anger, so much, like, you see what Donald Trump tweets all the time, and like the news media, and like everything shows. It brings me a lot of anger and frustration because there's so many like undocumented people who are so talented, and like they are like, they're pursuing careers and being like doctors and like lawyers, and they want to just pursue higher education and be good people. Like it brings me so much frustration because all we want to do is just come to this country and study and just do good. Like we're not criminals who want to like do any harm. Okay, like of course there are some people who might be criminals and do bad things, but it doesn't mean that that's not who we all are. It's not like saying like just because one American does something, it doesn't, like, it creates a stereotype that for all of them are like that, but it's not true. And it brings me a lot of anger because that's one thing, like I see my parents especially, and there's so many misconceptions, and when I think of like they're portraying my parents like that, and that's one thing that brings me a lot of anger because they're like really hardworking, and I know how much they've sacrificed for me, and like so many other parents, like I know a lot of people are in the same situation as I am, and I just think it's wrong that like we don't get to speak about how our situation really is and tell our story, and instead other people are saying how, or telling, or if that makes sense, like, or saying how we supposedly are without us even being able to say like how we, I don't know if that makes sense.
You're making perfect sense.
Yeah.
No, I completely understand, and I think your point is so valid. You know what I mean? And I think it directly relates to this. I've been around this country a lot. I've grown up in Long Beach. I was born out of the country. One thing that I love about Long Beach is the diversity. So I went to Millikan High School. My wife went to Poly High School, right? On my block, there were all different types of people represented. So I grew up in a situation where diversity is just the reality of my life. You know what I mean? I didn't grow up in a community, say like maybe somebody, I've been across the country, like, family members that live across the country, Oklahoma, Nebraska, some of these other states
Not
where
diverse as much.
no, yeah, there's no diversity.
No diversity. Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
So a young person could grow up and never see a person of color ever. You know what I mean? All they see is what they see in the media.
And that's why they believe that, and that's why it's so easy for them to like feed into that and like that stereotype, and they automatically think that everyone is like that, and it's unfair. And I mean, of course, like I understand why they think that because they've never been exposed to other people of color. But I think like people should do like their own research and like learn that not everyone is like that. And yeah, it's just pretty unfair how the media treats or how they kind of like portray us in a way that isn't right.
And I agree. I think that one of the big things, is throughout the country, when a kid, let's say the kid grows up in Nebraska and is in a very isolated community, not a lot of people of color, maybe no people of color, then that person gets to college and then decides they want to go to New York or they want to go to Long Beach, right? And then they show up and they realize that all these stories they've heard and all these misconceptions that the media has fed them are mostly wrong, right? And
Yeah.
so then they're confronted with two things. They're confronted with, and I want to say, I think that's maybe partly why we hear in the conservative media that universities are bad, that they brainwash people. I think what they do is they tend to force you to understand
Be more
that,
open-minded, and they
yes.
allow you to be more. That's what they don't want. Yeah, yeah.
Right, yeah, and just that open-minded kind of approach. And I've talked to people across the country, and I have family members that are very, very close-minded to kind of how we do things in Long Beach. I talk to a lot of my friends, and we're all like, we're so lucky to have grown up in a spot where we have such a diversity of everything: people, food, music. We're just such a lively community, I think, that I'm happy that you were able to exist in an area where maybe you didn't feel that pressure on a personal level, but then there's that pressure on a national level from the media, from the president, and some of his remarks, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So let's go ahead and what do you think is the biggest thing Americans don't understand about undocumented people? What is their biggest misconception?
Their biggest misconception about undocumented people. I think the same thing again with like motivation and like the reasons why we're here. It's once again, it's not to cause any harm or not to steal anything from this country. Like once again, like we want to like we love this country. Like of course there's so many things that I'm thankful for being here, and like I'm very thankful for the opportunities that I've been given, because like I know my parents wouldn't have been able to like enjoy the things that we do now. And so we don't I don't make any sense, but I'm saying like we're not here to cause any harm or anything. Like we just want to come and like live and like
just like anybody
and coexist
else,
with other
just like anybody else.
We're just like you. We're just like anybody else. Yeah. Shouldn't be treated any differently than others. Yeah.
Well, I think people forget, like, and I think part of the problem is Donald Trump, when he was running for president, said some stuff that was pretty shocking to me. And I think some of the things that he said are what some of the people in these communities that we were talking about across the country, kind of things that they feel, right, but they don't think about, right? People across the world have the same dreams. People want to have a good job. People want to, they want to raise a family.
Yeah.
They want to have a good, spouse, right? They want to enjoy the same things everybody else. Are there exceptions? Of course there's exceptions. There's exceptions in the white community, in the black community, in the Hispanic community, in the Asian community. Everybody knows that there's certain people in society that don't buy into those values, but most people do.
Yeah.
Right? And so thinking about like, a comment that Donald Trump made when he was running for president about, all Mexicans are rapists and these things, these offensive things. Yeah. I'm like, not only is it offensive, but really what it does is it gives the people that actually listen to him a very, very skewed and unreasonable view of what the undocumented or any immigrant community is.
Yeah.
And all we have to do is look back. Donald Trump's ancestry is German. My ancestry is Irish. People who originally came to this country in the 1830s and during that wave of migration, or the 1870s during that wave of migration, Italians towards the late 1800s, every group has been discriminated against.
Yeah.
And you'd think that we would learn our lesson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You think that eventually we would understand that people just want the same thing. What do you think about that?
Like we've all gone through similar struggles if you look at that. Like we've all, like you mentioned earlier, we've all been like immigrants in some way or another and have faced discrimination. And I think rather than focusing on our differences, we should see like how we've had similar struggles and how there's a pattern in the way we've been treated. And instead of focusing on that, we choose to do the opposite. And yeah, I think it's like it's not right at all.
Yeah, and you know what's kind of sticks in my head, which I tell my students and any lectures that I do, is I'm very perplexed by the constant repetition of this statement. Is that if we learn from our history, we're less likely to repeat it, but we keep on repeating it over and over and over again, the same mistakes. I don't understand how somebody, if I got somebody and I pulled them out of their chair, you know, from Oklahoma or Nebraska or wherever they are, and sat them down right next to us and had them meet you and all the things, all the great positive things that you're doing and all the great positive things your parents are doing. And every, you know, student that I've had who maybe first generation and their parents were born in Mexico or El Salvador or wherever they're born, and just say, look at what I see. You know what I mean? Look at the positive contribution. Now go back to your life and look at your community, and are people in your community doing the same thing as these people? Because I think it takes a lot of self-reflection for people to really put themselves in somebody else's shoes. You know what I mean? I had a family member tell me, oh, you know, Donald Trump, and he's going to build this wall, and it's going to be great, and he's going to stop illegal immigrants. And I'm like, I mean, you really think that that's a problem? You know, like I'm trying to make sense of where that headspace is, and you know, do you really think that that's a problem? Well, yeah, of course it's a problem because we're hearing it from the media and Donald Trump this and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, let's talk about it a little bit. Like, where do you, first of all, you know, I mean, is it even realistic for you to think that, you know, the majority of people coming into this country are committing crimes? Well, let's look it up. So we went to Google. Immigrants to this country commit much less crime than people who have lived here.
Yeah.
Because why would you come here and start committing crimes?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so as you start to inform yourself, and this family member sitting next to me, and I'm trying to educate them on the reality of the situation. And I think then it takes the person, are they going to be open to that new information or are they going to reject it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And stay close-minded. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I love having you on this program, because, you know, we get to hear straight from you what it's like, and hopefully somebody will see it and be informed.
Yeah.
So we've talked about kind of the media, what the media does. So the current national situation, how do you feel going forward? How do you feel about the next maybe 10 years? Like, what do you think it looks like? Are we going in a positive direction? I mean, it feels like we're going in a bad direction right now.
Yeah.
I hope it's temporary, but
I
how
hope
do you?
so too.
Yeah. How do you feel about it?
I think there's a lot of uncertainty still because I really don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 years because anything can happen. I didn't expect what, like, just this past year has been like already been really rough. It's felt like really long, and I really don't know what's next. But I guess just keep going with school, and hopefully I'm still here, and hopefully I'll be able to finish my studies and continue and pursue a degree and build a life for myself and build a career. And I think that's the plan. And once again, like keeping myself motivated and like no matter what, I know I still have good potential despite my status. So I think just keeping myself motivated, whatever might happen.
Yeah, and that's gotta, I mean, I understand it's gotta be hard trying to put myself in your shoes about, you know, maybe some of the depression that might come with this being just a constant, you know, thing. The idea of, you know, maybe a government, not maybe, yes, a government that may be unsympathetic to you and the needs that you have and the dreams that you have. And I mean, that let me just go ahead and go right into the DREAM Act. Let me just go over some stats. So there's an estimated 65,000 undocumented students, children born abroad who are not U.S. citizens or legal residents who graduate from U.S. high schools. Maria. These children are guaranteed an education in U.S. public schools through grade 12, but may face legal and financial barriers to higher education because undocumented people cannot get financial aid, federal financial aid. They can apply for private financial aid, but that makes it really difficult. I mean, because the only reason the way I was able to go to school is all of my school was paid by financial aid.
Yeah.
Right. And so not having that option can be, you know, pretty scary, you know. So there are a couple of paths to higher education for undocumented students, and that really boils down to the state and in the particular college, right? Can you maybe share some of your experiences now that you're in the position where you have to apply to college? So what college, just to tell me about your experiences. Like what is it like to start applying to colleges given your status?
I think it brought me a lot of pride to apply to college because it's my town silly, but there were a couple of times when I kind of got a little bit emotional because I know like this is the whole reason why my parents came to this country, for me to go to college and pursue a higher education. And like I've already received a college acceptance letter, and it felt so much like brought so much pride for me. And I know like I showed my parents, and I don't know, like this is all they wanted and this is what I've been working for. So this is something that brings me a lot of pride. But it was like really scary doing it at the same time because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know. One thing that I'm afraid of is like being admitted into a great school, but lack of money because obviously like I come from a low income community, and I don't like, my parents don't have like amazing jobs where they can give me like $80,000 to attend college, and I can't enlist in like an army or something like that, and that's not an option for me. But the good thing is like I do like we're in a time where like I have so many resources I can apply to, and I'm really lucky to like live in an area where I can get help and get aid from anyone. I just have to ask for it. So the good thing is like I'm not afraid to ask now, like before like I used to, and I used to live in the shadows and I used to be afraid of doing so, but now like I know that whatever college I go to, I'll be able to get that aid. And there's so many resources that like I've looked into like what schools that I'll apply to, and the schools that I apply to like do provide a lot of resources too. So that's one thing that I considered when applying to school. And I know that they citizens apply for the FAFSA, but there's a separate application. That's I'm really lucky like once again to live in California, and I feel so grateful because I applied for something called the Dream Act. So once again, it's like that application, it also provides you with money, but it's once again like from the state, so it's not like federal financial aid. But I guess like applying to college made me really thankful because it brought me a lot of pride because like I'm going to college, and that's a big deal. Like for me, it's a big deal. For my parents who work in like working class jobs and earn like minimum wage, and like it brings me a lot of pride, and like but also puts a lot of pressure on me because I know that like I have to like go far now. Like now it's up to me. Like it's in my shoes, and but it's a good thing. It's a good kind of pressure. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it
But
totally makes sense. And
yeah.
I think that it comes down to like there's a certain generation in every family where that generation is expected to achieve more. Like your parents put you in that position. The original, my original immigrants came from Ireland to escape the potato famine in
Yeah.
Ireland. And they were like, okay, things aren't working out for us here. We have to move. Now we're going to do everything we can, working 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Now it's your turn. Now you have to do better than us.
Yeah.
And what's kind of scary is the statistic that came out a couple of years ago that my generation will be the first generation not to do as well as their parents. So we have the baby boom generation,
Yeah.
which is very wealthy, and most of those people are in their 60s and 70s now. And then the generation right behind them is my generation, and our salaries aren't as high, are more expensive living expenses and things like that. And it's kind of in my generation looking back to you guys and your generation going, God, I hope you guys fix it. I hope you fix all these all these problems, because my generation is relatively small in numbers. So the baby boom generation is huge. Then the Gen X generation, mine is small. Then your generation is massive. It's even bigger than the baby boomers. So you guys hold a lot of political weight, right? And I think you're kind of like maybe on the tail end of millennial into the next generation after that, with a much different kind of way of looking at things in terms of immigration, in terms of all kinds of progressive kind of ideas. And I think that's beneficial. Going back to living in California, what is, when you apply for colleges, are you looking just to stay here because of our kind of the way that we look at immigration and stuff, or is something you want to do, maybe brave one of these other states? I mean, to me, I would be terrified. You know what I mean? I would be absolutely terrified to go to, Alabama.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I did consider going out of state, but like I kind of had a conversation with it about my parents for a while, and yeah, it's not an option for sure because like I think it'd be easy like getting there, but like travel is something I can't do because like I stay here and like I know I'm here and like I'm safe here, but if I were to go somewhere else, it's like uncertain once again, or even like it might be silly, but like one thing I considered was like for holiday breaks or something like that. Like imagine like returning, it's dangerous and like it's something risky too. So yeah, I think just in state is one thing that's all I'm considering for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. Like traveling out of the state could just provide all kinds of issues, especially in the current climate. Maybe in the future,
Yeah.
if things
Maybe.
change, maybe,
Yeah.
hopefully, I'll
Hopefully.
cross my
Yeah.
fingers and hopefully, the federal government can kind of, maybe evolve a little bit. And the way that I kind of look at it is, each generation going back to the beginning of this country owes their past to whoever immigrated into this country to make their lives better.
Yeah.
One of the things that last year's graduation, I was sitting there with some of my teacher friends, okay, and we're looking at all the graduates, and we get emotional.
Yeah.
Some of you guys we've known since you guys were ninth graders. Some of us, like Mr. Santo, have known some of his kids since they were in sixth grade.
Wow.
So imagine, a kid, sixth grade, knowing them all through their schooling and then watching them graduate. It can be very emotional for us.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there, and a young lady walks into her seat, and she sits down, and on the back of her hat it said, "They migrated, so I graduated."
Yeah.
And it's like I'm looking down the whole line of teachers, and everybody's just sobbing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's just it's a simple statement, but it means so much. It's like my parents made this huge sacrifice for this moment right here, and that's what it's all about. And I just had to go up. I just felt the need to hug her and just say, congratulations. I know that this is, the dream for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's making me emotional right now too. I don't know. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because it's America, in my opinion. That's the way that I view it. You know what I mean? This is what this country was meant to be. It wasn't meant to limit people. It wasn't meant to say that this weird line on the ground, you stay on your side, I stay on my side, and everything's good. To me, that's never made sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because of where you're born, why should it say so much about what your potential is? Your potential comes from here, inside of you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and nobody can tell you, what you can be in this country or whatever. So why don't, and it's been proven, by the way, statistically, that immigrants add to a society. They add the diversity, they add, there's so many studies have said that with the influx of immigrants, it just creates a more robust society, a more diverse and energetic society.
Yes.
Look at California. We have the sixth largest economy in the world, and we are one of the most diverse states. Is that not proof enough?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm going on and on and on and on.
No,
It's just,
that's good. That's so true.
Yeah.
And I think these people need to realize that. And like it's true because like a country that like prides itself on like the American dream and like it says that you can come like supposedly like, the foundation of this country is you can come here and build a successful future for yourself. But then when you come here and you face discrimination too, it's kind of like I don't know, that kind of like but it is true, like you are able to like build a successful future for yourself wherever you come from in this country. That's something that I'm really thankful for too, because I don't know where I would be if I had stayed in Mexico instead. So yeah.
It is. And that's an important point that you make. It is kind of a mixed message. Come to
Yeah.
our country. Oh no, we don't want you. But I think that the reason that emerges is because people get settled into their communities with people that look like them and talk
Yeah.
like them, and then they go, something's going wrong maybe economically in this country. So instead of looking at ourselves, we're just going to blame other people.
Yeah.
And when the government tells you to blame other people, then it gives you that relief of, hey, it's not me.
Yeah, that's so
You know
true.
what I mean?
That's
It's not me that's the problem. It's them that's the problem.
Put all the blame on them.
You
Yeah.
got it. And
Yeah.
we can see that throughout history, right? Of people being
Oh
blamed
yeah,
for
yeah,
things.
always.
So, this has been a fantastic talk, and I couldn't, I can't thank you enough for coming on,
No,
Maria.
thank you.
So let's what I want to do is I want to cover a couple of last things. I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget them. So we've gone over a lot of stuff, where Maria comes from, what her her struggles and issues have been being undocumented. Her the experience for college, which I think is important, to share with other people in your position.
Yeah.
And I think there's more to talk about, but we're running out of time. Would you be willing to come back on and talk a little bit more?
Definitely,
Okay.
yeah.
So, but let's cover a couple other things, and maybe we can talk a little bit more later on. So we know President Trump has some pretty strong views. As a teacher, it's very important for me to remain neutral, in the classroom. But I can't control what our president says,
Yeah.
and so I have to look at what he says and take it at face value. And it helped my students interpret it at least. And so he said, made a tweet, "I will end illegal immigration and protect our borders. We need to make America safe and great again." What does that mean to you?
We need to make America safe and great. America's already great. I don't think there's no. Yeah, I mean, it does need to improve a lot on its like immigration policies and all of that. But yeah, that tweet is infuriating because it's unfair and it's not right that he's tweeting stuff like that. And once again, it feeds into that stereotype, and it feeds into what you were saying, how people who are not exposed to people of color, not exposed to diversity, they will just automatically take that and assume that it's true, and they will support him. And that's why people support him, because yeah, they don't know to think otherwise. So yeah, I don't think that's right at all.
He's kind of. I mean, it seems to me, my interpretation and some of the interpretations of students that I've heard is that giving somebody else to blame, right? So
Yeah.
America was great back in this time, and without saying it, he's saying it, back when America was like all white and all Christian and all this one way.
Yeah.
That's when it was great. But if you look at the founding documents of this country, that's not really what it is. It's about two people sitting here, completely different from each other.
Yeah.
Different religions, different backgrounds, different heritage, and coexisting together.
Yeah.
I can be me, you can be you,
yeah.
and yet here we are, citizens of the same country, which is in my opinion, the great promise of America. Two people that are completely different, living in harmony together and accepting the difference and celebrating the difference rather than discriminating against it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, would you agree on that kind of? Okay.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and end this today. And I do want to revisit some of these topics with Maria later on, but I would like to thank you so much for being a part of Panther
definitely.
Pod
Yeah.
and talking to everybody about about what you're going through. I admire you. I thank you so much for being you. Being you and confronting what is a very stressful, a very challenging environment that you're in, and making the decision every day to just say, this is my reality, but I'm not going to let it hold me back. Even though you have to face some very, very unpleasant things about the current state of this country. So I thank you so much for coming on and sharing your views and your feelings, and we'd love to have you back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, because I think more people need to understand the experience. I know I'm not the only one on this campus who is probably going through the same thing, and I wish more people would hear about this and understand that it's okay, and to just hang in there, I guess, because I know how it felt to live in the shadows before and be afraid to talk about my status. So thank you for letting me be on the podcast.
You're very, very welcome. And so a closing note, if you would like to come in and talk to me about this on Panther Pod, or even come talk to us, maybe we can get Maria back and maybe have a guest on here to talk about some of these issues. That would be fantastic. So signing off, this is Panther Pod number 3. Yeah, Panther Pod number 3. I forgot. So once again, thank you, Maria, for coming on the show.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.